next Cage-Side Combat podcast. I'm Conor, and as always, I'm joined here by Kyle.
Hello.
And Brad.
What's up, guys?
We're here to talk about all things MMA from the last week and preview the cards for this weekend. And at the end of the podcast, Brad will defend his heavy debate title once more. We're going to start this podcast speaking about the card from the last weekend. The Donald Cerrone we all know and love returns, and this is the one without hair. And he knocks out Yancy Medeiros with 3 seconds left in the first round. Are we happy to see Cowboy back in the win column?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Donald Cerrone is one of them weird fighters where I've yet to meet a person that doesn't like him. He's got a great charisma about him. He's got a great personality. His fighting style is absolutely amazing, and he just always puts a smile on people's faces. Why I'm not at all unhappy to see him do back-to-back Fight Night main slots, even when he lost to Darren Till so emphatically. He's just the quintessential UFC fighter, whether he's ever held a belt or not. So to see him win again, and especially in such a great fashion, is just incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Great performance as well. I feel like it's not one of those wins where I'm going to get excited about it necessarily too much and think, what's Donald going to move on to next? Because he seemed, I don't feel like he is improving or anything like that. We didn't see exactly like a new Donald Cerrone, but always good to see him get back in the win column and see what he's going to do next, really, because he's talking about going back to lightweight, which I'm not sure about, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I have to agree that the move back from welterweight to lightweight is very confusing for me. He's looked so good at welterweight, and when he was at lightweight, he was quite clearly struggling with the weight cut, and I just don't understand why. He's going into a division that's possibly stronger than welterweight. Fair enough, the people are lighter, but I don't think that really makes much difference, especially when you're talking about the talent level at lightweight. There are certain UFC fighters that sort of talk in the way that if you're not going towards a title shot, then what's the point? And Donald Cerrone, I don't think he's ever going to get anywhere near the title. I don't think he's good enough in any division, but it's not like I'm saying he should retire because of that fact. He's doing perfectly all right where he is. The term journeyman comes up in boxing quite a lot, where it's thrown around for these fighters who fight for their entire careers and never really touch a title. They're always at the gate, making sure that anyone that passes them is worth fighting for the title. And I think that's what Cowboy Cerrone's role is in the UFC. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to be the world's best fighter to make a mark on the sport, and Donald Cerrone has done more than enough to make his mark on the sport. He's obviously not got that many fights left in his career. The other two people with as many wins in the UFC, Michael Bisping and GSP, are both talking about retirement. I don't want Cowboy to retire as long as he wants to fight, but I don't want him to go back into the Shark Tank that is lightweight. I don't see the advantage of it. I don't see the point. You fought the worst the welterweight division has to offer in Darren Till, Jorge Masvidal, and so what are you? Cowboy's not scared. He's not scared, but what are you scared of? Is what I'm trying to say. The only thing that happens at lightweight is you get battered by the likes of Khabib or Edson Barboza or Kevin Lee. The whole thing's just an unhappy situation. So I wouldn't move down.
I think touching on what you said, Kyle, about not kind of being excited that it's not a new Cerrone. He did beat Yancy Medeiros, who at least two of the three in this podcast, we bet against Cowboy in that. And we were, and Medeiros is strong and kind of using that the Hawaii hype that's currently ongoing. How can you not be excited by Cerrone defeating someone like this?
Yeah, I guess. And that is being a little bit overlooked, the fact that he did just beat Yancy, but I feel like we've seen so much of Don Cerrone that you expect him to beat Yancy, but it was only the kind of loss streak that kind of muddies that. He should be beating opponents like Yancy, the skill level of Yancy, consistently. It's when he gets to those top guys that he struggles. So I didn't find it's not surprising to me that Donald won, especially after seeing him in interviews and he was sounding like he was motivated. I think it's Donald Cerrone. If he's fighting somebody, especially somebody he knows will give him a good fight, he's very motivated. I don't. The only thing that bummed me out a little bit about the whole result was it's like, if it just proves once again Donald Cerrone is Donald Cerrone. He's not changing. He's probably not going anywhere for a while. This what you see is what you get.
To that point, though, I would say, like you said, we saw him in interviews and he seemed really good. I have to say, I thought the opposite. Like when I was seeing him in interviews, there was that one particular interview. I can't remember exactly who it was for. I think it might have been Fox, where his beard had grown really long, and he was talking about the terror of fight day and how nervous he always is, and he was getting praised for his honesty, which by every rights he should do. Not enough fighters talk about it. I think it's a major problem for young fighters when they get in there, they suddenly get really scared of what they're going through. And so to have someone like Donald Cerrone talk very openly about how terrifying the whole experience actually is when he is a legit tough guy, I think is really valuable. But at the same time, the way he was talking to the camera, I don't know what weight he cuts from. I don't imagine it's very high. I can't imagine he cuts much. But when I was watching him interviews, I was like, Jesus, he looks terrible. He sounds terrible. He sounds old, and he sounds not scared, but he sounds not like the Donald Cerrone we'd seen before. But obviously, that's not really a marker of how well he performs, because he went out and absolutely smashed Yancy. So I don't know. I don't know where Donald Cerrone's heads at the minute. The way he fights, the rate of it, and who he fights against, I really see him just collecting as much money as he can. I mean, I'd love to know what the payouts for Cerrone fights are, because once upon a time he was getting near enough £300,000-400,000 a fight.
Well, he's part of that special monster promotion, isn't he? He's one of those guys, so he must be getting a bit.
He must be getting something, yeah. I mean, he must have enough money to retire by now, and you just hit it's all well and good after the Yancy fight, because we're all sat here talking about his praises, but watching him go through the Darren Till slaughter was pretty painful as a fan of Cerrone. He didn't just lose; he got battered, and I don't want Donald Cerrone to be the guy that young up and comers just make the name off. Yancy tried. He had a lot of respect for Donald, and it's nice, and the hug to the grandma was all beautiful, and he made a lot of headlines and all that kind of crap. But are we going to keep Cerrone around in that 5 to 10 slot in welterweight and lightweight just so that people can make the name off him? It's you might as well hang him up in the gym and call him a punching bag. He might win a few, but then he's probably going to sustain some serious damage in the meantime.
But I think that the point you made earlier about kind of the position he's in at the moment, I think the word I'd use to describe him is the gatekeeper of the division.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, if you beat him, you're allowed to move on to the title, and if you don't, you need to work on some more things and then move up. And I think, as the gatekeeper of a division, he is kind of put in that position where young fighters are going to try and make their names off of him. And you'll get successful ones like Darren Till, and then you'll get not so successful ones like Yancy Medeiros, who's definitely going to go back, work on his stuff, and then try and go back at it.
Yeah,
but I think as a gatekeeper, that's what he's forced to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like we were talking last week when we were talking about fighters throwing in corners throwing in the towel when a fighter's had enough. I think there is a point in which a management needs to have a word with a fighter and just go, look, where are we going with this? Are you really going to fight into your 40s and still preoccupying this role as a gatekeeper in dangerous divisions in the world's most dangerous martial arts division? I suppose, I mean, this is all well and good us speculating, but Cowboy's cowboy. Cowboy's going to do what he wants. So, I can well see it. I can see UFC 250, Cowboy opening the main card. Like, still a headline in fight nights. He'll always be that draw because even when he wins or he loses, it's Cowboy, isn't it?
It's Cowboy. So looking down the cards, in the co-main event, Derek Lewis beat Marcin Tybura by third round knockout. Where do you see him going as he aims for the heavyweight top 5 and more specifically the title in kind of a stacked top 5 now?
The heavyweight division really is a bit. You win one fight and it's like, oh, where do we go from here? It's a bit blocked up. I've seen a lot of people saying Francis Ngannou, which would be a great fight. I'd love to see that, but I don't know how long Francis is taking off. I think if his team were doing him service, they'd have him take a good amount of time off. So I don't think that. I don't know if that's going to happen. Derek Lewis apparently injured his hand, I think, or something during the fight, so that could work out if they come back at similar times. The winner of Volkov versus Verdum, maybe? I guess. There's not a lot of options, so I don't want to see him fight. It
depends when he's back.
Yeah, it really does.
It's dangerous giving him... I mean, I'm just going off the assumption that Fabricio's going to win that fight, and giving Derek Lewis Fabricio Verdum is just a recipe for disaster if you try to build Lewis as the star. Verdum are just monster him, in my opinion. It's too technical.
I think they keep trying to build Lewis as a star, and he wins a few fights and then loses some and keeps on going like that. And that's the problem. I think he's got power, which you definitely cannot sleep on. And he's got some good skills elsewhere, but he's still not at that top echelon that you kind of need to be with people like Verdum, Ngannou, Miocic, and kind of Curtis Blades, who I think is now 6th in the division.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen loads of people like Kyle throwing around the Ngannou fight. And while I want to see it, I just feel like what he does, Ngannou does, but better. Like, as terrible as Ngannou's cardio was, it's very different watching a striker go up against a wrestler as good as Stipe. Like, you are going to get tired because you've got a 250-pound man just laying on top of you. You're trying to get him off the entire time. 5 minutes. It's basically 5 minutes of weightlifting with a 250-pound weight. Like, it's going to be tiring. And especially one that's so good at like distributing his weight. So like, I think we can forgive Ngannou for not having the world's best cardio. Whereas Derek Lewis, you saw him in a 5-round scrap with Mark Hunt. And they were both just throwing punches. They were both just scrapping, and they both looked like they were about to drop dead. Like, try doing that with Ngannou. Like, and as good as Derek Lewis's striking is, I don't know if it's good enough to get Ngannou out there, because I know a lot of people were criticising Francis after the UFC 220, but at the end of the day, he took some significant damage from Stipe Miocic, which has, I mean, he might not be classified as his massive knockout artist, but he's taken out some of the best heavyweights in history. Francis has a chin, like, whether people want to admit it or not. Like, the guy didn't get put away by Stipe. He was thrown for the fences. So I think that fight's a lot more one-sided than people admit it is. And I honestly don't see it being a fantastic fight if it comes to fruition. I see it just being two guys just slogging until they're both knackered, and then one of them just either they both slog until there's a sloppy decision, or one of them catches the other one clean in one of the rounds and it's over. And I think it's Francis. So I'd rather see Francis versus Mark Hunt, if I'm honest.
I don't see it happening this way. But what if Lewis can kind of avoid Francis' powers for the first 1 or 2 rounds? We'll say this takes like a fight night main event, and it's a 5-round. If Lewis can avoid Francis' power for the first 2 rounds and take him into later rounds, again, this is where we saw Francis kind of struggle. and we know that France will come back stronger, and he would have worked on his fitness and cardio. But I think Lewis could cause some troubles if he can get past kind of the first round onslaught. But that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. How do we forget about Derek Lewis could fight the winner of the monster matchup next week between Stefan Struve and Andrei Arlovski? He could totally fight the winner. If it's Struve, I'd maybe be interested in that. Do I want to see Andrei Arlovski get knocked out again?
The real main event, you mean? Yeah, real main event.
No.
The people's main event, some are calling it.
Yeah.
I thought we agreed never to mention that fight again.
We were so close to a pay-per-view headliner with Struve and Arlovski.
Oh.
I think we'll get into this later, but I picked Marcin Tybura in this fight more than anything just because I wanted excitement in this division. I feel sorry for Marcin Tybura because he seems to be just getting fed to these absolute monstrosities, like off not that many great wins, to be perfectly honest. But the finish was great in this fight, but the fight itself wasn't incredible. It was just kind of like, we're both fat guys that have gassed out at each other very quickly, and then just Lewis landed that one that clocked him, and then next thing you know, he's on the floor. So I don't know. It's heavyweight division's an odd one. It's weird how in boxing the heavyweight division's unanimously been the best division for like all of history, and in MMA it frequently just goes out of the public gaze.
I think it's because there's never been kind of up until Stipe, there's never been a dominant champion, because Stipe holds the record for most title defenses, and I think looking back, that's just crazy.
Yeah,
it's just insane that he does, and even then, we're not considering Stipe as one of the pound for pound best, or at least the majority. If you ask, no one will put Stipe up there. I think if he can beat DC, that's the page turner. I think that's the big one for him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, if he beats DC, that definitely puts him up there in the pound for pound rankings. But if we do see a John Jones comeback in 2018, I'd like to see him versus Stipe. Personally, I'd prefer that to DC versus Stipe. I think even if he loses against John Jones, I think his pound for pound stop more against John than it would be against DC.
Winner of DC Stipe faces Jones in Jones's return, or would you like to see Jones fight one more, fight another kind of fight to ease him in, and then?
I'd put John wherever you want him, marketable wise. I don't think John is one of the greatest athletes of all time. You know, you can caveat that with steroids or whatever you want, but I do think he's one of the best of all time, and I don't think he needs a warm up fight, especially against DC. We've seen him beat twice, and against Stipe, I think they're very well matched. I think both their styles match up with the other one well, so I think it could be a very good war. So it's something to put together in the future should Stipe win.
Definitely. Okay, we're going to try and keep this short because we spoke about this man way too much last week. But Sage Northcutt won. What's next for him? We spoke about too much promoting and kind of his raw potential. But where do we see him go next? Do we want him to fight another kind of few low guys? Or do we go against what we said last week and give him a bit of a push?
I'm to be honest, I'm not really bothered anymore. I'm off the Sage train. He very closely won as well. It wasn't, I think that the decision could have gone either way. I think if I was Sage management, I'd say take some time off to, just learn some stuff. He's got youth on his side. He should be. Most fighters in this time are winning fights, taking time off, improving themselves before they go into UFC. I think that's what he needs to do, is not necessarily leave the UFC. I think that would be fairly stupid on his part, but take some time off to improve your game and maybe find, he's such a marketable guy. Find some avenues for a plan B or something if MMA doesn't work out. Good to have that there, and then see. Work out the next steps. But he's so young that he can afford to take the time, and I think he needs to take the time to develop a bit more before jumping straight back in.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly going into this career 2 feet in, and it's like Kyle said. I don't think he has a plan B, which is kind of scary because he's so young. The amount of time a person can fight this long. He's very short, and especially in the intensity that he's fighting. And it's if he fought until he's 30, which is when people consider to be their athletic prime, that's 9 years away. 9 years in the UFC, he's going to be a fucking shivering wreck by the time it's finished. And he's fighting at lightweight and welterweight. It's not a good prospect. And I don't see If you ask somebody what's Sage Northcutt good at, it's point karate. Fair enough, he's a pretty good striker. He's on the page with Wonderboy, but Wonderboy is only one division up. You put him and Wonderboy in the same fight together, I could see Sage getting battered. Mm-hmm. I think his striking is good, but it ain't that good. He throws some fancy. That level. He's got some fancy looking stuff. And I don't want to throw accusations, but I'm just there are very few people in the UFC that look like Sage, and there's a very good reason that very few people look like Sage. And then, especially with the comments that Cody said about Team Alpha Male, do you remember in the build up to him and TJ, he was like, TJ showed us how to do steroids, and everyone suddenly just looks at Sage and Sage is like, not me, Mr. Faber. It wasn't me, Mr. Faber. It's your innocence might be your undoing, because I think there is probably some people whispering in Sage's ear. Don't get me wrong, the guy's clearly a full-grown man and could deck me, but at the same time, I feel like he's kind of a kid being pushed into a career that not necessarily he wants. He's just an obsessive athlete, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, and the UFC's all power to them for backing him. But it's just, it's do you remember when Nate posted that Instagram quote, and he was like, "If you want to fight me, bitches, you got to ask nicely." And then Sage posted a video "Hi, Mr. Diaz." I think it was oh my god, can you imagine the fight between Nate Diaz and Sage Northcutt? Can you imagine? Maybe not even the fight. Imagine the press conference beforehand. It'd be feeding a fucking newborn. It'd be like feeding a newborn puppy to a lion. Nobody'd want to watch it, but everyone would watch it. To watch the puppy's fucking entrails being sprayed all over the wall. Imagine Nick and Nate both going in on Sage, and he's just sat there. He's barely heard curse words before. And it's just, Stockton, motherfucker! Stockton! And he's like, I don't know what that means! I don't know what that means.
So what you're saying is Sage Northcutt should train with the Diaz brothers? Because I'm fully behind that.
No, not fight, train with. Yeah. That would be brilliant.
Just throw him straight in at the deep end. Have him go on a night out in Stockton with Nick Diaz. Then have him do a whole training session with Nate. Just do the whole works. Can you imagine if that was Sage Northcutt throwing up gang signs at the UFC and then pulls a blunt out from his top pocket?
That's what I was about to say. I want to see Nate and Sage sat next to each other and both at the same time pull a blunt out of their pocket and just spark it.
They'd be like his stepdads.
I've seen so many edits of Nate UFC Austin, where obviously when he pulls the joint out, I've seen so many edits where they put Sage like in the place of it. And then, I don't know if you seen. Did you see the UFC promotion for Sage before UFC Austin, where they just took his pre-fight, where they're like I can't wait to fight this guy. Like, I'm going to take him to the ground and I'm going to do this and going to do that. But he bleeps like every other word out. So he's like, I can't wait to this guy. I'm going to get on top of him and he's. It was amazing. We're like, what top quality promotion. But it's almost a joke. Like, he's so good. It's almost bad for him. Like, it's the fact he still calls Uriah Mr. Faber. It's like, how long have you been trading with him? Like, he clearly mates.
Can you imagine?
I think one comparison, though, that you could kind of make is what you get with, like, child actors and child singers. Mm-hmm. Because Sage we haven't seen this kind of in the fight business, because it's kind of frowned upon, but Sage has been, I think he was in the front cover of a magazine at, like, the age of 7 or something stupid. All he has known ever is fighting, and again, that can have a kind of a bad effect for him. And yeah, he's nice and childish, but I wonder if there's something bad for him there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you've looked up the history of child actors, but it rarely ends up well. I mean, I think Sage would do much better if he went down the drugs route and just became a raging heroin addict. And
this conversation's gone well.
It'd be great for his marketability. Like, there's this weird thing where the UFC thinks him and Page are like the perfect marketers. And it's like, well, look at your pay-per-view stars. Look at Conor. Look at Nate. Like, look at John Jones. They're clearly not going to church every Sunday. I mean, I know John tries fucking posting Bible verses and stuff, but like everyone's like, nobody's believing that, John. Like, just like, people don't want to admit it, but even like the Bible thumping Americans don't like fighters and don't like celebrities to be like these godly saints that they want them to be. They want them to be the requisite, especially we're talking cage fighting. Like, who wants their cage fighter to look like a Christian version of Ivan Drago from Rocky IV? Like, it's I don't know. He's a weird one. He's like the perfect marketing tool, and yet he's been used in completely the wrong way. It's just he's a strange egg.
Can you imagine Faber trying to win back like Sage's favour? Like, he's trying to win back custody of Sage from the Diaz brothers. He's like, you need to be doing drills, Sage. And Sage is out in clubs beating people up. 4 people jump him in a bathroom.
Women on either arm.
Oh, please. Please.
Like, I had this conversation with a friend. I was showing him in Sage Northcutt. I was having this conversation with a friend recently. I was like, Sage has got this weird persona where, like, I'm sure he has. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure he's not. I'm sure it's mainly an act for his mum, who clearly tapes everything he's in. But like, you get this feeling. He's like, I wonder if he's even had sex. Like, I would actually put a significant amount of money on him being a virgin. Mainly because he's this good Christian boy that probably wants to save it till marriage, and it's like, while obviously that has no mark on his fighting ability, at the same time, it's like, we don't, like, unconsciously anyway, like, there's a psychology behind watching rock stars, behind watching celebrities, behind watching fighters. It's like you're living a life vicariously through them. And you're watching Sage, who, all right, he looks like a Greek god, he fights like a champion, and you're watching him and you're like, you're not living the life that we imagine that you should be living. And like, I know that shouldn't be important, but at the end of the day, it is. Like, that's the reason the Diaz brothers are so popular. Like, they may not be the best fighters in the world. Like, they're not. Like, they lose their fair share of fights. But we like them because they don't give a fuck. They represent that person inside of all of us that just wants to go out and tell everyone to just piss off and for us to do what we want. I mean, they don't even look that great. Like, when you see Nate, especially when he fights at lightweight, he looks like an advert from Feed the World. looks drawn out and horrendous. It's the same with Conor. Like when he weighs in at featherweight, Christ, it's like an advert for fucking Narcotics Anonymous. Like it's hardly like a popularity and an image contest. It's people acting out a lifestyle that we want to live, and Sage just isn't living out that lifestyle. And like, so when they get confused about why his marketing's not working right, I'm like, because I don't think he's that marketable. Just he might have a career on Dancing in the Stars like Paige Van Zandt did, but that's about it.
Let me remind you at the start of this conversation that we said we wouldn't speak about Sage Northcutt for that long.
Also, we were discussing
broken promises.
We were discussing what's next for Sage Northcutt, which through the period of about 10 minutes, we've decided heroin is what's next for Sage Northcutt.
Dancing with the Stars as well. He's got a bright future.
Yeah.
Is that what you call heroin?
Yeah, it is.
Depends how good the heroin is.
So, moving on to the news stories of the past week, and kind of the big one certainly over the last few days is the drama surrounding Conor McGregor and the lightweight title. Dana White announced that McGregor would be stripped of the belt and that Ferguson Nurmagomedov fight would be for the title. But then McGregor posted on social media saying he offered to step in and face Frankie Edgar at UFC 222 at featherweight, but there wasn't enough time to generate the money needed. I'm guessing the money needed to pay him. But he did say he will fight again and did say that he was the champ. So what do we make of this kind of giant mess that is currently the lightweight division?
It's a strange one, especially because it's, we got 222 next weekend and then 223 is the next one up. There is about a month's gap where I don't think there is a UFC. There might be one fight night or something like that, but there's not a lot. So I guess they've got time to sort out them, but it's getting a bit crazy, to be honest. If I was in Tony's camp or Khabib's camp, I'd be pushing the UFC every day for a definitive, answer. But Conor has that John Jones effect where he reels me back in. He said that he said that he offered to fight Frankie Edgar, and I do believe that he would have said to the UFC, "I'll fight Frankie Edgar," and obviously there's not enough time. Not enough money. I think that his management would have said, "You're not fighting Frankie Edgar. You're not going to featherweight again, especially not."
Yeah, forcing him down to featherweight.
Edgar. So that wouldn't have worked to begin with. So a lot of people are saying he's just made that up. Like, what's the point? Like, why would he? There's no way that would ever happen. I do feel that he did. That is true. That aspect of it, because Conor's a fighter. Like that's why. And I always felt like he would get that urge again because it seemed like it wasn't just about the money. It was about becoming the greatest. So I feel like he will come back by the end of the year. I don't know if he's going to come back as soon as he's saying. I'm sure if he comes back in August or September, the UFC aren't going to say, "No, you can't come back. You've left it too long." So I'm sure it'd be fine either way, to be honest.
I have to take the opposite position to Kyle. I don't believe that he offered to fight Frankie. I feel like he might have colloquially offered to Dana because obviously they have each other's number. I think he might have offered. I don't think his management would have signed off on that. I don't think John Kavanagh would have signed off on that. I definitely don't think Dana would have signed off on that. I don't think it was ever discussed realistically. Even if he had a full training camp, if I was anywhere near Conor's management, I wouldn't let him fight Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar is like the anti-Conor. Especially, I don't know what they were expecting them to fight at, if it was 145 or 155. If it was a 145, it's even worse. Like I just said, Conor at 145 is like a heroin addict. Him fighting Frankie Edgar for an interim title, for him then to have to face Max away again, I really don't see it. I think it's a lot to getting back in the limelight, but I will agree with Kyle, in that I think this is a symptom of him getting that itch back. I think he really wants to fight again. But I just don't think the current landscape really facilitates him fighting at the minute, because his options are either drop down to 145 and fight Max or fight Frankie, or he stays at 155 and fights Tony or Habib. I'm not saying he's scared of any of them, but at the same time, from a planning perspective, all four fights are horrendous. The best of those is probably Max, because he's beat him once, and Max is primarily a striker. The other three are mainly ground specialists, and they're all absolute nightmares. I don't see him fighting any of the four. I think the most likely out of the four is probably Max.
I think probably the easiest going against you is probably the easiest for Conor is Tony. I think Habib, horrendous fight. Frankie Edgar at featherweight, horrendous fight. And I think Max Holloway at featherweight is a horrendous fight, because there's no way he's making featherweight again. And I believe that he offered to fight at featherweight, but I know that it probably would never ever happen.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Conor recently, but like, he looks a lot thicker than he ever did when he fought Nate at 170. So I have to imagine he's walking around at 180, maybe even 185, 190. Like, he looks massive. Like, not in a bad way. He doesn't look out of shape.
He's just had a baby. He's still got that baby fat.
Yeah. Him and his missus is just ordering Domino's every night. I mean, it's not in a bad way. He doesn't look terrible, but he's not the Conor that fought at featherweight. Like, when you watch the fights with Max back, or his Aldo fight or whatever, it looks like a completely different person. I don't know. It's like you say. I think Tony's a pretty good fight for him, especially if it was Tony or Habib. 100% Tony, just because Tony has that kind of mentality where if you say you're a striker, he'll stand and strike with you. But the problem is, Conor doesn't KO people; he TKOs people. He knocks him to the floor and then goes in for the kill. And with Tony, if you manage to knock him down somehow, you've got him on his back, and then you could be ground and pounding him, and he could triangle you instantly. Like, you have no idea what he's going to do. So all the fights are pretty horrendous, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. But another news story from this week: there were 2 fights announced for UFC 224 in Brazil, both of which we predicted in the previous podcasts. Vitor Belfort faces Lyoto Machida for the first time ever in the battle of 2 old Brazilian guys. I doubt that's how they'll promote it. But
yeah, that would be funny if they did.
It's just 2 old Brazilian guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then at the top of the middleweight division, Jacare will face Kelvin Gastelum. And I was going to ask, are we happy with these fights? But I think I'll let Kyle shout out our opinions on these 2 fights.
Well, I'm sure Brad definitely agrees about how, when this was first rumoured and we discussed this last week, the Vitor versus Machida fight, we were just saying this is just going to make us sad that this isn't, they're not a little bit less careless with the testing for this fight. So, maybe they make an exception, that would be great. It's in Brazil, but, just let it slide. And
quickly look away.
Yeah, it's fine. Machida hasn't announced that it's his last fight yet, and I think he should. I can't think of a better way for him to go out than him and Vitor both leaving, no matter what. See what in Brazil, 2 icons of Brazil. It just makes sense to me. And the Jacare one is interesting because I always felt that Kelvin would do really well at middleweight until he got to the top guys, and we saw that against Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman was far too big for him. And Jacare just knocked out Derek Brunson. And with Jacare, if he gets you to the ground, I can't remember, apart maybe Yoel Romero, I can't remember a guy that he's gotten to the ground that he hasn't finished. Robert Whittaker managed to avoid it. Kelvin Gastelum is going to struggle, I think, with that. But his hands are absolute lightning. So that's a great one as well.
I think the nickname Jacare, which is it's either crocodile or alligator, I can't remember, but it's just perfect for.
It really is.
Like just his style, because his striking's quite good and it looks good against Brunson. But if you look at his groundwork, it's perfect. And I think though everyone knows how good his ground game is and speaks about it, I think it's probably some of the best that we've ever seen in the UFC. Because it's just insane.
Mm-hmm. I'm also seeing an hour ago, MMA Junkie reported that Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington is being targeted for that card. So
full Brazilian card then.
Yeah,
that's very interesting though, because that was the cards in which everyone envisioned that it was going to be Nunes versus Cyborg, which means the talks for that have fully broken down. I mean, obviously people suspected it when Cyborg was put against whoever she is next week.
Go on, try it. You butchered it so much.
Unitskayana?
We'll go with that.
Nowhere near.
Unitskayana, yeah.
Just say it really quickly and no one will understand.
There
you go.
Said it.
Well done.
Conor, you were speaking at the same time. How rude.
What a shame.
Yeah. I mean, everyone suspected when that got booked, but I also thought Cyborg was just like, it's a few months away. Like why not just slay another bitch in the meantime? But her Nunes versus Raquel Pennington is a very interesting fight, but it does beg the question as why the Cyborg Nunes fight isn't going down. I don't think it's on Cyborg's part, because I think she's pretty thirsty for something like that. Makes me feel like Nunes isn't. I mean, I can, no shade on Nunes. I can fully fucking see why she doesn't want to fight Cyborg. But it's interesting. But as far as the Machida Vitor fight goes, like Kyle said, just hand it over to the Brazilian anti-doping agency, if there even is one.
There will be now. They're hearing this.
There's one guy called Miguel in a shanty town. It's just like, oh yeah. I ask them if they take steroids. They say no. Yeah, it's fine.
We can add that to your accent list.
Yeah,
your
your already
Irish.
impressive list.
And apparently now Borat is from Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the Nunes one, going back to the whole Cyborg thing, I think she, in her head and in her team's head, she doesn't want to fight Cyborg yet, because she's kind of, obviously she's just destroyed Rousey, she has that under her belt, and how she won the title was really good. Shevchenko was, we discussed this last week, really close and could have gone either way. So I feel she wants at least one more dominant performance before she goes after Cyborg, to kind of, even if she loses to Cyborg, it's something to fall back on.
She wants a few more wins before she enters the coffin.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
No, I don't. I mean, Christ, I think we possibly had this discussion once, but like, Cyborg is a featherweight, which puts her in Max Holloway's division. If we were doing like for like, I see very, very few men actually contesting Cyborg. Like, in the bantamweight division, I don't see Nunes doing that weight well. If you put her up against many of the men, she do all right. Don't get me wrong, but like, I don't see her getting past number 6 or number 7. Whereas, put Cyborg in the male featherweight division, I see her doing fine. Like, I think she could hold her own. Like, I think just tomorrow day you put her and Max Holloway in a cage, I think if it didn't go to decision, I'd be quite surprised. I don't think either of them would be able to knock out the other one. I don't think either of them would be able to submit the other one. And I'd be quite surprised I'd be surprised if Max didn't win, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cyborg won. And that's just how good this woman is. Like, she's a world killer and the best woman MMA fighter we've ever seen. So I can't blame Nunes for not wanting any part of that.
I think if we now move on to our predictions point of the podcast, but before we preview and predict the cards for this weekend, we'll look back at how good or bad, emphasis on the bad, our predictions were last week. Now we're going to do a league table, so you get 1 point for the correct fighter, 3 points for the correct fighter and method, and then 5 points for the fighter, the method, and the round. So in last place currently, with 8 points, is Kyle.
I thought I had that, to be honest.
No way, I genuinely thought I'd lost. I was like sat here like, yeah, this is it.
In second place with 9 points, so only one ahead, is me.
What?
And then in first place, and currently winning both the league and the heavy debate title, is Brad with 11 points.
I'm sorry, can you please break that down just really quickly, because I
Okay.
don't believe it.
So looking at, so you pretty much won all of your points, won the majority of your points from the Bellator card.
Yeah.
So you predict Nemkov by KO, which got you 3, and then you predicted Pitbull by KO in the first, which was all correct, and that got you 5. So I think it was Bellator that won it for you.
Yeah. I was going to say, it definitely wasn't the UFC.
But we'll be keeping a league table, and at the end of the year there'll be a prize for the winner, and I'm thinking maybe a forfeit for the loser that we'll decide. I don't know what we can think of yet, but we'll decide.
Shave your head.
No way. I'm saying this now. Anyone that knows me and my hair, no way at all. But looking forward to the cards this weekend. Another great card, really. Josh Emmett, who is undefeated at lightweight, faces Jeremy Stephens, who is fresh off beating prospect Do Ho Choi. Another easy name. How do we see it going?
I've been a big fan of Jeremy Stephens lately. Ever since the Gilbert Melendez fight, where he looked like... I always had the same problem with Jeremy Stephens, where I don't like picking fighters if they have to chase a knockout. And Jeremy Stephens, for me, was always that. But he looked so versatile against Gilbert Melendez and really picked him apart. And then...
2 words, leg kicks.
Yeah, ridiculous. And I picked him in the Do Ho Choi one as well. And he got that done. Jeremy Stephens just looks so different to me. He looks so much more like... He's still as vicious as he always has been, but he seems to set everything up so much better. He doesn't just chase people. He's calm, but he just times everything so well. And I haven't seen an awful lot of Josh Emmett, but I think Jeremy Stephens gets the KO in maybe round 2.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy Stephens, his tenacity inside the cage is one thing, but his tenacity outside, he had to put up with possibly the biggest slander in UFC press conference history with the "who the fuck is that guy?" Like,
best, I think one of the best, most quoted.
Iconic, absolutely iconic, and like, I mean, he put himself in the firing line because he went up against Conor when Conor was going for the double championship, and you know, he was literally like, "Sit down, boy, I've got this." But ever since then, he's just been on a tear, and he's a fan favorite, and for a good reason. Like, he's a smaller guy that acts like a heavier guy. His hands, his speed, his tenacity, and his skill is absolutely unmatched. I don't understand why he's not the A side against Josh Emmett. Like, if anything, he's actually kind of annoyed me. Like, I know Josh Emmett came in and KO'd Ricardo Lamas, but Lamas got caught, and the fact that Josh Emmett was slightly oversized as well, like, I know it doesn't invalidate the result, but at the same time, to me, it murkies it. Like, the guy didn't make weight, and then he came in and knocked a guy out on a week and a half or 2 weeks notice or something like that. I don't think he should be getting all this praise. He definitely shouldn't be a number 4 ranked featherweight in the world if you'd have got him into the top 10, I'd have been like, yeah, fine. Put him into number 9. I mean, I know people will say like, oh well, he beat number 3, so I'm like, well, he beat number 3 under very special circumstances, so I think it deserves an asterisk next to it. I do think Jeremy Stephens takes this. I don't think by KO. I think by decision, but we'll see.
As I said, some great fights on the cards. So people like Mike Perry, OSP's on there, Jessica Andrade. Who are you most excited about seeing?
Yeah, it's a really good card. Honestly, I've been following Mike Perry a lot at the moment, and I'm really invested in Mike Perry. But the matchup is a bit, it seems like it's one of those, he's opening the card. The UFC are probably hoping for a highlight reel knockout there, get people excited. So despite the fact that I'm really enjoying watching Mike Perry at the moment, Jessica Andrade versus Tisha Torres is a great fight. And how can you not like Jessica Andrade? She's like the female John Lineker. It's brilliant. So definitely that one.
I have to so agree. I was when you started saying Mike Perry, I was literally like, I don't understand how you can be ignoring Jessica Andrade. I love this girl. Even watching her face Yanni and Jacek, where she clearly got absolutely pieced apart. There's this weird disconnect between the fighters in the UFC that are super technical and the ones that are just fighters. And she is super technical and she's a massive fighter as well. She advanced for 25 minutes against Ian Jacek, even though she ate so many punches and kicks. I think it was several hundred punches to the face, and I'm pretty sure she never took one step back. It was incredible. And then her versus Claudia Gadelha was absolutely incredible. It was a savaging. She absolutely beat that girl up. The way I always describe her to friends who ask about female MMA is I describe her as a female Daniel Cormier, because Daniel Cormier has the same style. She's short for the division. She's bulky. She's wide. She's got a great takedown defense, and she just pushes forward like the Terminator. You can throw whatever you want in her face, and she will just step forward, step forward, step forward. She might not be an insane KO eyes. She might not be amazing at submission, but God, is she tenacious, and she's got such a great attitude, and she looks amazing. And if she wins this, if Rose Namajunas beats Jan Jacek for the second time, I could easily see her fighting for the title. I can't see her fighting Jan Jacek for a second time just because it was such a technical battering. So if Jan Jacek gets the title back, I can't see her fighting for the title. She probably would have another title contention fight, but if Rose wins, Rose versus Jessica Andrade, I think that would be a fucking amazing fight. And I would be surprised to see Rose as the favourite in that as well.
I think two things they're being slept on in this card. Looking at the prelims, Henan Barral is headlining the prelims, which is he's still up there. I know his recent performances haven't been great, but he is still up there. But I think a JRE favourite, the Joe Rogan podcast probably favourite fight of all time, is opening the Fox prelims, is Killer B Ben Saunders versus the sexiest man alive, Alan Jaban. I think a very interesting one, because they're both friends with Eddie Bravo, so they're both 10th Planet alumni. And Eddie's actually said on his podcast and interviews he's abstaining from this fight. He's not training any of them. He's going to be at the fights, but he's not going to be cornering either of them. It's very interesting. I'd quite like to see this go to the ground. It'd be interesting to see very
two
interesting
Planet guys go at it. It's interesting.
But moving on to predictions now. So because there's only 4 fights on the main card, we're going to make predictions on all 4 of them. So first fight on the main card, Mike Perry versus Max Griffin. Brad, how do you see it going down?
Mike Perry KO in the second round.
Kyle?
Mike Perry in the first.
And I have Mike Perry by decision. I think it's going to be... I think you spoke about it, where it was kind of... They've built it up for highlight reel, but I think he's going to disappoint. A fight we haven't talked about, OSP versus Ilir Latifi. Who do we have and how? Brad?
God, this is a difficult one. I'm going to say OSP via decision.
Kyle?
Yeah, this is for me the hardest one to decide, just because I don't have a particular favourite, and I never know with OSP which OSP you're going to get. Sometimes he looks like the huge prospect he was built up to be, and then other times he just doesn't really look that. He doesn't have any urgency. So I think Ilir Latifi will get it for a decision.
I'll agree with Brad. I've got OSP by decision. So Jessica Andrade versus Tisha Torres. Where do we see this going, Brad?
Jessica Andrade via TKO, and I'm going to say the... Fuck it, why not? First round. Let's go Sizzler.
Kyle?
I think the Jessica Andrade in the third round, that relentless pressure, just she doesn't stop coming. I think eventually she'll get it.
So third round by?
Oh, TKO, yeah.
TKO, and I'll again agree with Kyle. I think people think I'm copying you two, but no. I've had these fights down on Verdict for a while. I think we need to at Verdict and get sponsored by them or something. But I've had these down on Verdict for a while. I've gone third round TKO for Jessica Andrade.
This is where Tisha Torres comes out and just fucking Rose Namajunas' Jessica Andrade. Everyone's like, oh shit!
Yeah.
Thug Tisha. I don't think it goes so well, but now to the main event. So Brad, Emmett or Stevens?
It's gonna have to be Stevens, and I'm gonna have to say I think it's gonna be decision, but I'm actually gonna make the official pick as KO or TKO in the second round.
Kyle?
I've actually changed my mind. I'm going to go for Jeremy Stevens KO in the first. Yeah.
Dan. And for once, just to prove I'm not copying you two, I've gone with Josh Emmett. And I'm going to say Emmett by second round KO. Because though you both spoke about him being kind of hyped up a lot, I believe in his power. And I think it's going to be kind of a steady first round, and they're both going to try and throw some bombs, scare the other person, and then I think in the second, Josh is just going to connect, and I think finish it. So, but moving on, now on to some homegrown MMA. Cage Warriors 90 takes place in Liverpool this weekend, with the company crowning their first women's flyweight champion, as well as the return of hometown hero and former featherweight champ Paddy Pimblett. Now, I am a dirty, dirty casual, and I've never watched a live Cage Warriors event. And the only name I've heard before is Paddy Pimblett, because of articles written about him. So, Kyle, I know you're a big Cage Warriors fan. Mm-hmm. Why do I need to watch the card this weekend?
I was listening to the BBC MMA show earlier, and they talk a lot about, obviously, with them being based, London, Liverpool, that kind of area. And Paddy Pimblett, the guy who runs Cage Warriors, I can't remember his name for the life of me, has said multiple times now he's never seen anybody get that kind of reaction from a Liverpool crowd since Conor McGregor in Ireland. Like it's crazy. He doesn't have the kind of just monstrous run that Conor had, which catapulted him into stardom. He hasn't had that, but he's still only like 24. I first found him because he looks like my mate ridiculously. So, and that's how I found him, and I've been watching him since. And he's great. He's real good with the crowd and everything. He lost his title in his last fight, so he's coming back, starting off the main card. A little bit less pressure for him, get back in the win column. And the main event's great as well. Molly McCann versus Bryony Tyrrell. One thing I didn't know, but Bryony Tyrrell is a mother and an NHS nurse, so that's pretty impressive to begin with. Molly McCann, for people who don't know, trains with Paddy Pimblett, again huge in Liverpool. She used to play for Liverpool's women's team and then suffered a pretty bad injury that meant she couldn't play anymore. And instead of where most people think, I need to think of a plan B, someone a bit quieter where I, don't need to worry about injuries, she said, I'm going to take up MMA. And there she's in the main event. So this card, especially because it's on before the UFC, so if you watch on BT Sport, which I do, Cage Warriors is right before the UFC and then it goes straight into the UFC afterwards. I'd definitely recommend tuning in for that one.
Yeah, I mean, Paddy Pimblett is one of the weirdest MMA fighters in the business today because he's such a big star in the UK with realistically not that great a following. It's like you say, like there hasn't been something like this since Conor McGregor in Ireland, but Paddy Pimblett is a fantastic talent and such a hometown hero of Liverpool. And like this is obviously the Darren Till hour, as it's unofficially now known. And he's good mates with Paddy, and they train together quite a bit. So it would be great to see him back in the winning column. Me and my mate actually first seen him. We accidentally stumbled upon a Cage Warriors live broadcast where we watched him fight, and he actually ended up vomiting blood after, like, during the post-fight press conference. Like, they were literally like, "Oh, and how do you feel about this fight?" And he was just stood there and went, bleh, just vomited blood all over the octagon. Not a great sign, obviously, in the prospect, but at the same time, it shows the kind of how much this guy is willing to go through to get the win. And Molly McCann, she's just so likeable. It's like Kyle said, she played for Liverpool. She lives and breathes Liverpool. And if you've ever been to Liverpool, it's such a phenomenal city. It's got such pride in its people. It's got such pride in its art, its fighters, its athletes. It's an incredible place. And I can't wait to watch it live and hear the roar of the crowd when she comes out, because I can guarantee her and Paddy are going to get the most incredible reaction, because I know for a fact they love it. I mean, I know for a fact Darren Till's going to be there. I've not seen anything to support that, but I know for a fact he'll be there. And I know the entire city of Liverpool are going to be behind them because they're just like that. I will say it's a shame Lee Chadwick, the Butcher, had to get taken off this card because he's an incredibly exciting middleweight. That was going to be the third title fight on this card to cement it as one of the greatest Cage Warriors events that's ever happened. Still probably going to be the best, but would have been better to see Lee Chadwick there. He's another one that him and Molly, I can see them in the UFC very, very shortly. Paddy's relentlessly refused the UFC for some reason. Maybe just hates money, but at the same time, him doing that well in the UFC is probably arguable. So maybe it's a good decision for him to just stay in Cage Warriors and do. It's probably enough to make a living off.
Yeah, he said.
A great card either way.
I was watching an interview with him earlier, actually, also on the BBC MMA podcast. They did an interview with him, and he said, once I've won everything I've won in Cage Warriors, and I was expecting him to say, then I'll go to the UFC, and I was going to be like, oh, that's a great decision, take your time. He's only like 23, 24, there's no need to get carried away. But he actually said after he's won everything in Cage Warriors, he's going to go over to Hollywood because look at that face. So there you go.
He has the worst hair in MMA.
He looks exactly like my friend Robbie, which is why we find it hilarious, because he might be the least threatening MMA fighter, at least in terms of big draw, but he's just brilliant. He has that Darren Till thing where he seems like that lad that from down the street. He creates that feeling of people being proud of him, and I love watching him fight. So yeah, can't wait for that one.
So this won't count towards the league table, but quick predictions. So Kyle, just run down who you've got for the card.
For the Cage Warriors card?
Yeah.
I just closed the card down, so...
Nice. Just
say who... Molly McCann versus Bryony Terrell.
That's such an interesting fight. I'm going to take Molly in that one. I just hope that the moment doesn't get to her like it did to Paddy. But they know each other so well. I don't think it's going to be, because they used to be training partners, I don't think it's going to be a fast one at all. It would be a very, very close fight. I'd say possibly a decision win for Molly.
See, I'm going to go Molly via TKO. I think the moment's going to invigorate her. I think she's been in competition long enough that she's at least used to part of that, and I think she's so hungry. I think she knows the UFC's on the horizon. I mean, I think we alluded it to her last week. I mean, the UFC might be on the horizon, but it's not a nice horizon because you've got Valentina Shevchenko on that horizon. So, you do as well as you want to in flyweight, love. It's going to end badly. But I'd love to see her climb the ranks. It's like we were saying before, the title's not everything. You having a good career in MMA is as respectable as anything. So, Molly McCann via TKO.
One UK fighter that backs that up. Obviously, he won the title recently. But even if he hadn't won the title, Michael Bisping would still be considered a legend of the sport.
Yeah.
And even now more so, because he has won the title.
I mean, so many MMA fans kind of disregard his title run as even legitimate because of how how anyone could even think that, because it's like, if you won the title, you won the title, that's it. But, there is enough people out there that think, Bisping wasn't the real champion. And yet he's still a legend because of that reason. He is the journeyman of the middleweight division. You can't look past him. And if you're going to fight him, it's going to do good things for your career. And I think it's going to be a very similar story for Molly in that flyweight division. I mean, she could surprise us. She could come into the Chev fight and just dominate. I don't see it personally, but it's MMA. Anything can happen. Let's see it. That's the only way we know. And then, so Kyle, the other one, Paddy versus Alexis Savidis.
Yeah, I think Paddy's going to really try and focus on taking this one slow, and being calm and waiting for a shot, and potentially showcasing some new weapons he's added, because before he looked a bit out of ideas fairly quick into a fight if he didn't get an early knockout. I think he gets the finish in the third round TKO, just slowly waits for his moment and catches Savidis. So yeah.
Yeah, I see. I'm good. I'm going to go slightly different. I think Paddy will get a decision. I really hope he comes back in a good fashion, because he's a very likable guy, despite having the worst hair any human being has ever had. I won't hold that against him. He's a very likable guy. He's in his hometown. He's a hometown hero. He's a very talented fighter. I just hope he gets to showcase his stuff. Decision by Paddy. And the other two fights I could care less about, to be quite honest. So
nice. But I was reading. I did my research. Unlike you two, that wing everything. I do my research, and I was reading up about Alexis Savidis, I think it is, and he's on a 7-1-1 streak with 6 finishes, and they were kind of dubbing him a very big submission specialist. So if Paddy does face that trouble of kind of looking lost in a fight when he doesn't knock someone out straight away, could trouble be caused from that, and especially if it gets taken down to the ground?
Potentially. I don't worry about Paddy's jiu-jitsu. The jiu-jitsu there is really good. His teammate and another Cage Warriors champion, Chris Fishgold, who's on his way to the UFC by all reports, was recently in a grappling match at Polaris with Marcin Held, and Marcin Held did get the win, but still that's a pretty big thing to jump into. Paddy's jiu-jitsu is fine. It's when he comes up against wrestlers that was shown in his last fight. He doesn't, if he can't get a sub off of his back, he struggles. So submission specialists don't worry me too much. It's just whether he takes him too lightly maybe and thinks, this is just a fight for me to get back in the win column, get back on top of things, and he doesn't, come in with the urgency that he should. That's a potential danger there.
Kind of another thing, speaking about Cage Warriors, I've lost it now. Oh yeah, who else, if you had to pick one person from Cage Warriors currently to make it into the UFC, who would you pick?
Without a doubt for me, apart from maybe Paddy, my favourite fighter in Cage Warriors, Nathaniel Wood. This guy is incredible. He's so good. He's Brad Pickett's protege. So they've got that link there. I'm surprised he isn't in the UFC already, to be honest. He will be by the end of the year. His last fight, if you haven't seen it, was a 1-round title defense, and it is both fighters get dropped. It's crazy. His striking is quite Darren Till-esque, where it has this kind of flowy Conor McGregor kind of stance, and then he just backs you up, and he's great. So definitely Nathaniel Wood.
Personally, it'd be the original headliner of this card, Lee Chadwick. He's not got the greatest record. He has had quite a lot of losses, but his finishes are absolutely incredible. And he's the middleweight that could really shake up that division. Cage Warriors has to be one of the UFC's best feeder divisions. Like, it's provided them with so much. It's unreal. I feel like there's so much insignificant talent. That's probably quite unfair to say, but at the same time, the creme de la creme of Cage Warriors has just gone on to produce some unreal talent. It's why I've got such high hopes for Molly McCann. I wish Paddy Pimblett had come into the featherweight division so we could see what he can actually do. Lee Chadwick the same time, and then Nathaniel Wood, like you said. Is it Brett Johns that's fighting next week or at the UFC London? The Welsh guy.
Yeah, he was the one that got one of the submissions of the year with
Car
Slice.
Yeah.
He was a Cage Warriors alumni. We see so much, and it's just that British tenacity. Like, it's that British fighting mentality. It comes through so well because, like, half these people, if they weren't fighting on this card, would be in Liverpool town centre scrapping anyway. And so it's just like, what we're getting paid for it, might as well fucking try now. So, like, it's a great feeder organisation, and I can see Molly especially doing really well, and I couldn't be happier because she seems like a really, really nice girl.
Cool. Now, we're moving on to the part of the show where we give one man free reign of the podcast to moan to his heart's content. Now, this man is so foul-mouthed that even my dad said, Jesus, he swears quite a lot, even for a northerner.
Even for a northerner? That's impressive.
Even for a northerner. So, Brad, what do you have beef with this week?
Well, I was originally going to talk about something else, but I think I might have to have beef with Conor's dad now, because even for a northerner, I was toning it down. I thought it was on my best behaviour. No.
All I'm saying is good luck with that one, Brad.
Yeah. So this week I'd like to talk about the emergence of MMA's first ring boy. So initially, this might come across as a bit of a sexist point of view or whatever, but I would actually like to reorientate and actually go from the other perspective. And I'd like to speak about how I can't believe it's been this long for MMA and boxing and combat sports and sports in general to get ring boys. It's become quite the story is that Elias Theodorou has become the first ever ring boy in sports that I could find. why hasn't this happened before? I just don't understand why it's not happened before. We've had ring girls since time immemorial. Girls that just parade themselves around a ring, parade themselves across a racetrack, parade themselves across football pitches, darts, stages, whatever, in bikinis. I don't like to call myself a feminist because I'm a very massive opponent of identity politics. I don't call myself a leftist, a centrist, a right winger. I don't call myself anything. I just have specific views. But the one thing that I do feel very strongly about is the objectification of women. I don't like it. I don't think it has any place in a professional circumstance, and especially in MMA, which has been at the forefront of women's rights and equality, which is quite strange when you look at people like Dana White and the MMA community in general. But MMA has become, to my knowledge, the only sport where women are paid the same as men on whole. Ronda Rousey is still considered, despite the fact she's signed to the WWE, she's still considered one of the biggest stars in WWE, in MMA, I'm afraid. And Invicta, which is the organisation that Elias has signed with, is a fully women's division. There's no men fighting in that promotion. Why they haven't had a ring boy before this, I think is completely ridiculous. Why wouldn't they have a ring boy? Why? I mean, the argument there is that most of the audience are still males. And this brings me to my sort of culmination of my point. And the thing that really annoys me isn't the social predication of having ring boys or ring girls. It's the mentality behind it. And the argument that people normally have is that, oh, well, a ring girl is an independent worker who can dictate her own worth, who can dictate any amount of money, any hours she wants, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, people argue it as though they should be proud to do it, and they should be. They should be. They're their own agents, but the way they act in reference to male ring workers is that they should be ashamed. When Elias announced he was going to be a ring boy for Invicta, people took the mick, people took the piss, and people said he should be ashamed. There was, references to homosexuality. There was references to how feminine he was, despite the fact he's absolutely built. And the fact of the matter is, you can't argue both. You can't argue that women should be proud to be ring girls because they're in a respectable career, and then insinuate that men shouldn't be allowed to do the same career because it's irrespectful. There's a disconnect there. Elias should be proud to be the first ring boy because he's leading the forefront in the same way that Ronda Rousey led the forefront for gender equality. Elias should be proud for what he's doing. I really hope to see more UFC fighters go over to Invicta as a ring boy. Fuck what Dana says. Dana's going to make some offhanded comments, whatever. Elias, he's doing it in cargo shorts and he's getting sponsorship. Man's making bank. I'd like to see someone like, Chris Weidman, Lou Rockhold. They could go over and make, and if they were making on the side an extra $50,000, all they have to do is walk around the ring. Why is that ashamed? Like, why should they be ashamed at that? It's ridiculous. I think MMA fans need to set their head out their arse and realise that this is 2018 and that walking around a ring in your underwear isn't that big a deal. Brad's piece over.
Well said, Brad. Very well said. But I think I need to now call for no more Mr. Nice Bread. Because it's that time again for the cocky northerner to step up and flex his muscles and defend his heavy debate title. 3 rounds of world-class heavy debating. Each debater getting 1 minute to convince me, plus the choice of a 15-second counterpunch, which they can only use once in a debate. So Brad, once again, is the defending champion. Heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails never fails. So once again, it's heads. So Kyle, are you going to go first or second?
And once again, I don't have any notes, so I don't know what order the questions are in. So this is a complete gamble.
When I joked about me being the only one to research whilst doing this show, I wasn't lying. It's very true.
I planned to, but I didn't. I was late as it was. I'll go first. Why not?
Okay, so Kyle, the time starts when you start talking. Who should CM Punk? Oh, sorry. Should CM Punk fight again?
Okay, no, CM Punk should definitely not fight again. MMA is not a thing that you can pick up at that kind of age. Maybe jiu-jitsu or something like that, you know, possibly, but not this, where how physically able you are to compete is a big factor. He's 39 now, which is crazy. Yeah, no, it is stupid. Even if he was 39 and he was in a lower organisation, I think it would be ridiculous. But yeah, there's no way. If he had a wrestling background, maybe it'd be different. But he doesn't have any experience prior to this. It's ridiculous to me. It's the UFC. They're the premier organisation in MMA. It's meant to be the elite of the elite. So you can't have a guy with an 0-1 record who's 39 and has no prior experience in, you know, like wrestling.
5 seconds left.
So yeah, he definitely shouldn't fight again in the UFC.
Cool. So we'll move over now to the defending champion, Brad. Should CM Punk fight again in the UFC?
Right, so basically, why not? Like, absolutely, why not? CM Punk is an incredible athlete. To work in the WWE for as long as he has done in all its feeder organisations takes an insane amount of athleticism. He was 200 pounds when he came into the UFC, and he's fighting at welterweight. Yeah, he did horrendously against Mcgregor. I'll concede you that. But at the same time, why not? Like, just why not? The MMA was not predicated in the same way as boxing is, where you needed these like elite camps. He went and trained with some high level people. His grappling's become really good. His striking's become admirable. And at the same time, it's not like he came in to the division and came in as a headline act. He came in as third on the card when he could quite clearly be headlining. He took
5 seconds
his
left.
shoes. He was humble. He did what he could, and he may have failed, but whatever.
Okay, so anyone want to use their 15-second counter punch?
No. However,
No.
I do want to point out we don't have video. We're not doing video, which is a shame, because you would have seen me giving Brad some weird looks about how much CM Punk's improved.
I think dealing with a card you've been dealt is probably the best phrase to use for Brad. But I agree with the point, why not? And I think if I was to make a point, I'd say you kind of give him another chance. Because it makes them money, so you give him another chance. And it's just fun. Even if he does get beaten up, it's still fun.
I don't think it is fun.
But
that first fight was very sad, and I hated it.
But there is no way that I can justify myself as a knowledgeable MMA fan and kind of agree and, well, disagree with the points Kyle made. So for the first round, I'm going 10-9 Kyle.
Brad, have you seen some footage of him training that we don't know about? Because you said his grappling is much improved and his striking is I think you used the word remarkable.
Yeah.
It's all right. We won't speak about it again. We'll move on quickly. So, moving away from fighting and kind of more into personal taste now. Who has the best walkout music? So this one's to start with, Brad. Time starts when you start speaking.
Right, so I'm going a bit basic on my pick for the best walkout song. I'm actually going to go with Conor McGregor and the Foggy Dew by the Chieftains and Sinead O'Connor. because I think of the critical factors that come into a great walkout song, it's got to be iconic, it's got to be catchy, it's got to be great music. Iconicism, absolutely. That song is so married to Conor McGregor. When those opening flute bars start, the crowd goes absolutely mental. It's a fantastic song. It has incredible lyrics, and its ties to the Irish nationality are undeniable. It's about the fighting pride of Ireland. It's about revolting against tyranny, and it's the same. It's what Conor fights for, and the song is amazing. It's such a great song. And watching Sinead O'Connor sing it live at UFC 189 was absolutely incredible.
Done. So, Sinead O'Connor, Foggy Dew. Kyle, what is the best walkout music?
Give me 2 seconds. I'm just thinking.
Wait, he started speaking.
Yeah,
the clock's going.
Wow.
Going.
Okay, in that case, I'll go with the first one that comes to my head, which is Michael Bisping and Song 2. Again, what Brad said, what does a walkout song really need to do? It needs to make you remember the fighter. It does that. It needs to get the crowd at the arena and the crowd there hyped. Does that. It gets him hyped, not too much. I feel like the problem with the Foggy Dew is it's a bit of a slow burner, and I feel like Hypnotize is the pit where it gets good. So I feel like a lot of people don't know that. They know Conor McGregor's walkout as Hypnotize. Song 2 is Michael Bisping's song. There's no way around it. It's so iconic. He's done it so many times as well, and it's just the perfect. Even if you'd never seen him walk out to Song 2, if you showed somebody Michael Bisping in interviews in
5
fights
seconds
and said, "What song do you reckon he walks out to?" Song 2 by Blur. There you go.
Nice. Okay. Now this is gonna.
I want to use my 15
So we're using 15-second counter punch.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brad, 15-second counter punch starts when you start speaking. Just want to make that clear, Kyle. Starts when you start speaking.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, it might be a good walkout song. Maybe even better if it actually lasted the full walkout. It's only 2 minutes long, so it has to play 2.5 times by the time he's actually got into the octagon. And second of all, if you ask the person what's Michael Bisping's walkout song, I guarantee they wouldn't know it as much as they knew what Conor's song was.
Done. Okay.
Yeah, I'll use mine as well.
Oh, okay. So, Kyle, 15-second counter punch starts when you start speaking.
I completely disagree. I feel like a lot of MMA fans don't even know that his song is called The Foggy Dew. They're just like, oh, it does the Irish jig. And Sinead O'Connor was there that one time that he fought Chad Mendes, and then it goes into Biggie Smalls. That's what people know. But the great thing about Song 2 is Michael Bisping runs.
Okay, so before the 15-second counter punches, I was going to say that this is probably the hardest decision that I've had to make so far, because if I had to pick, my top 3 would be Foggy Dew, Song 2, and then Hold On, I'm Coming for Robbie Lawler.
I forgot about that one.
Because that is okay. So Hold On, I'm Coming is.
I don't want this to count, but I wanted an honourable mention for Hey Mickey, also fine by Mickey Cole.
I was thinking of that one because Conor McGregor.
That's true.
Yeah,
or, actually, no. The only one to beat all of this is Ngannou walking out to Shakira.
Oh
yeah.
But
that wouldn't have been fair because that is the GOAT of walkout songs. So.
Just the best.
I wanted to give an honourable mention to Darren Till walking out to In the Air Tonight. That's pretty. That's a pretty.
I think we should
crazy
do a whole
atmosphere.
podcast just based on walkout songs.
Walkout music.
We could go forever. There's definitely a bunch.
Hold On, I'm Coming is actually in my playlist, not because I like it as a song.
It's my favourite song.
It's just such a. It just gets you up, gets you pumped.
Yeah.
But Song 2, memories of seeing Bisping live and that playing and everyone going mental. But so one of my best friends, Joe, me and him were the 2 UFC guys at college. And we would constantly send each other screenshots of us 2 listening to the Foggy Dew, especially on a McGregor fight night. and it's just tough. I think I'm going to have to go, though Brad's points are true, the Foggy Dew is just a kind of... Also, his counterpunch saying that Song 2 doesn't last the full, that does get a bit annoying.
He runs to the octagon, it doesn't matter.
I have to slightly agree, it does get a bit annoying. But yeah, the Foggy Dew is, apart from Hold On I'm Coming and Shakira, the Foggy Dew is the best walkout music. So 10-9 to Brad, meaning it goes to the final round.
I actually had Foggy Dew as well, and I didn't have a backup, so that's why it took me a little while.
There you go. See now you can agree. The final round. Kyle to start first. What is the best trilogy in the history of the UFC?
Okay, I'm going with probably what most people thought I was going to go with. Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos.
Shock.
For me, this is the ultimate trilogy because it has every single fight is important, and every single fight is how you would want a trilogy to go. A shocking upset victory in the first round, and then why do you have a rematch? Because you want to know, will that happen every time? Who knows? So you've got to run it back, and then Cain Velasquez destroys him in the second round. I think he became the first person to land 100 significant strikes and 10 takedowns in the same fight. And then now you've got to see, can Dos Santos was that a fluke from Cain? Was it a fluke from JDS? What happens? And Cain again beats the brakes off of him. We see the true extent of cardio Cain, sea-level Cain. And it's just the ultimate. Every single fight is brilliant. There's not maybe one of the fights is good, the other two are a bit like some other trilogies. Every single fight's good. Every single fight is a must-watch, and every single fight leads on. There's no like you can skip that one. You have to watch the first one, then the second one, and then it all kind of culminates in the way it always should have and always would have, with Cain just beating the brakes off of Junior Dos Santos, and he's never been the same since. It's perfect.
That's nice. Okay, so we're going to move on now. Brad? Time starts when you start talking.
I knew Carl would say that. I literally had it in my notes. So I picked the obvious best trilogy in the world, which was Fedor versus Big Nog, which started in Pride back in the day. Nogueira was the undisputed heavyweight champion of Pride, of MMA in total, and this unknown heavyweight came up the rankings called Fedor Emelianenko. He came into this and absolutely fucking paggered Nogueira in the first. When he pulled guard on a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, absolutely ground and pounded him, evaded all the submissions. The second won, and completely neutralized Fedor's game plan. It led into the third fight where Fedor had evolved into the master, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. He stood on his feet and he completely neutralized Nogueira to cement his place as the greatest of all time. He absolutely blooded each other, and they've both gone on to have illustrious careers, but this was the defining point. This is where MMA was first birthed in the crucible of fire. This was the trilogy that birthed all trilogies in Pride.
That was
in Pride.
That was in Pride. A nice little finish. But I just want to clear up with people. If I did say best trilogies in UFC, I meant in MMA. Shoot me for being a casual. I apologise. No counterpunches here. Both have been used. I think I'm going to just straight away say who I'm going to go with. And we have a new champion in Kyle. I'm going with Kyle. I think it's just the whole... There was a lot of passion from Brad, but you can't outmatch Kyle's passion for sea-level Cain.
I had to wait to pull the sea-level Cain card out. I was
he used
been waiting
it well,
a long time now, a couple of
3
weeks.
episodes in, and he's finally used it. But
I will admit at this point that I'd preempted Kyle using Cain versus Dos Santos, and I'd kind of hoped that he would pick to the point where I'd be allowed to answer first, so I could rub it from under his feet.
I thought you were going to pick Edgar versus Maynard, which is why I went with Kane. Because originally that was my
Edgar
pick.
Maynard would be the one I'd go with.
But to me, there's only one good fight in that trilogy. Don't get me wrong, it's one of the best fights of all time. But in terms of a trilogy, the first fight is a throwaway.
I think it's two and a half good fights, I'd say.
Well, no, but even the short... to me, even the short stoppage made it thirstier for everyone because it was like, okay, Nogueira can win. Because in that fight, in that second... Anyway, we're digressing.
Yeah.
Kyle won. Well, I'll be gracious to defeat.
I was going to say, now Brad's being quiet. Heavy debate title. And Kung Fu Kyle Diamond has won the heavy debate title. But now we need you. If you're listening and feel you can out-debate the best and win the heavy debate title, get in contact and you can challenge the best of the best on this podcast. Now, I know, Kyle, as the new champion, you've got someone that you want to call out, or maybe even a few people. Who would you like to call out?
My call out isn't necessarily anybody in particular. It's just everybody. Like I feel like Cormier. Like I need a Gustafsson. I need someone that like matches me perfectly. Because at the moment it's like, all right, we're recording. Oh, I wonder who the debate will be. Oh, I got to do it against Brad again. So we just need people to do it. Somebody potentially. I mean, Brad gave me two rematches, so you know that's only fair. But we need more people before it just goes straight to a title debate. So yeah, get involved.
Some say the greatest trilogy is Brad versus Kyle.
I should have picked that. I should have just played to the home crowd.
And if anyone out there wants to fight me for the number one contender spot, this is the real title right here. We can have two title fights in one go.
I'm not coming back on
the right title.
I'm not coming back on.
The one person I want to call out, spoke about him just recently, but he talks a big game, but then when he's challenged, he kind of just backs out a bit. So I want to invite the gentleman, Joe Mitchell, onto this podcast. So the heavy debate champion can show how bad he is.
Wow.
Maybe I'll even take a step off the fence and challenge him myself. That might be a bit of a super fight, but I want to invite him on to the podcast and kind of test his debating skills. So that brings us to the end of another podcast. Brad, where can they find you on Twitter?
At Subi Flanders with the extra S on the end.
Kyle, where can they find you?
At Kyle_Diamond.
And you can find me at Conor.Whelan73. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Definitely. If Floyd Mayweather happens to be listening, then he can jump on any time as well.
Yeah, quick shout out to Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, shout out Floyd Mayweather.
I mean, I will also fight him in the octagon. If you're listening, Floyd, I'll do it.